Sermon for the Unitarian Universalist Church of Indianapolis, February 21st, 2021. All Bodies Are Beautiful by Jamie Hinson-Rieger. There are somewhere between 30 and 40 trillion cells in the human body. It's actually a pretty challenging scientific problem to come up with a good number, and we don't really know. But the last scientific estimate in 2016 was 30 trillion cells, give or take a few. So if you counted the cells of your body one a second, 1, 2, 3, it would take you about 1 million years to count them all. Fun fact, the same study guesstimated there are also about 39 trillion bacteria cells in and around the human body. The bacteria are very small, smaller than normal human cells. Collectively, they only weigh 200 grams, about as much as 2 sticks of butter. But in terms of sheer numbers, there are more of them in you than non-bacteria cells. And those bacteria cells are part and parcel of human functioning, so from one perspective, you are just as much bacteria as human. Those human cells are busy doing a lot of things. In 1 minute, 35,000 billion red blood cells travel through about 60,000 miles of veins and arteries, each one carrying 100 million oxygen molecules to your tissue. You take an average of 25 breaths in that 1 minute, passing that oxygen to the 370 million alveoli of your lungs, which have the surface area of a tennis court and laid end to end would stretch for 1,500 miles. That oxygen is used to fuel a non-stop process of cellular respiration, generating energy for the body. So countless trillions of chemical interactions are occurring in your body every second to keep it powered and active. In that same second, about 200 trillion signals are sent through the command center of your brain. All of this activity generates a certain amount of wear and tear. In human adults, as many as 100 billion cells die and are replaced every single day. Over the course of a year, your body turns over the entire weight of your body in new cells. Over the course of 10 years, your entire skeleton has been replaced with a new skeleton. Your body is in a constant state of healing and regeneration. Now, 96% of your body doing all those things is made up of just 4 elements: oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen. But there are some 60 elements found inside you overall. We don't yet know what they all do. Those elements were forged in the hearts of exploding stars and scattered across the universe, some of them making their way to the Earth and ultimately to you. In a very non-metaphorical sense, you are made of star stuff. Star stuff that has self-organized over the course of billions of years on this planet, perhaps on other planets, into stable creations that not only move and react and sustain themselves over time, like the most intricate and complex machines in existence, but also perceive, think, feel, desire, wonder, dream, and love. In other words, your body is a freaking miracle. A living, breathing miracle. Set aside anything you think or feel or believe or have been told about your body and just pause with that awareness. Your body is a miracle. Now, there are religious traditions that identify the material, the physical, the corporeal, i.e. our bodies, with evil or sinfulness or that which is fallen in nature. Unitarian Universalism is not one of those traditions. There are religious traditions that identify the needs and the pleasures of the body with that which is lower. Traditions which recast the joy we take in food and drink, for example, or in relaxation or in sexuality, recast this joy as sinful urges. Unitarian Universalism is not one of those traditions either. Of course, there is theological diversity within our tradition, but nonetheless, the main message of Unitarian Universalism is that the body is sacred, is good, is deserving of joy and pleasure, is worthy. This is in line with our principles. If we affirm the inherent worth and dignity of each person, We must affirm the inherent worth and dignity of each body, including my body, including your body. Yet how different is the message almost universally conveyed in this culture to all of us from the time we are born to our last breath. There are so many messages sent about which kinds of bodies are valued, which bodies get to matter. The primary message of our culture is that the best bodies are thin and white, and those two demands are historically linked. Professor Sabrina Springs, in her book Fearing the Black Body, The Racial Origins of Fat Phobia, demonstrates how for much of the 17th, 18th, even the early 19th century, thinness was not valued in the same way it is today. There were medical experts in the 19th century who argued that the women of that time were too thin, that American women needed to put on weight. However, as scientific racism and the construction of whiteness came to utterly dominate the American consciousness, black bodies became identified with heavier bodies. Images of the famous Venus of Hottentot, for example, a curvaceous black woman, were plastered all over popular magazines. Heavier bodies were a supposed sign of African sensuality, which to Protestant thinking was a form of sin. And so thinness became identified with both whiteness and Protestant self-control, a mark of a superior and virtuous person. The consequences of the devaluing of the black and brown body are written all across the American landscape and throughout our history. I will only mention the most recent example. The New York Times reports that the life expectancy of all Americans has now fallen by 1 year because of COVID, the biggest drop since World War II. But it has fallen by 2.7 years for Black Americans and almost 2 years for Hispanic Americans, the lethal consequences of our disregarding and disvaluing of black and brown bodies. Now, setting race aside and focusing just on size, we know that heavier bodies are also subject to all kinds of prejudice and discrimination, from economic discrimination to lack of public accommodation. This discrimination often extends to their own healthcare providers. It is a very common experience for a larger person to go to their doctor to talk about one issue, only to find the doctor fixated instead on their size and prescribing weight loss as the cure. Now, I'm not a doctor, but it is well known that the most common measure used to discuss these issues, BMI, is scientifically dubious as a proxy for health. Weight loss as a prescription has an extremely high long-term failure rate and sometimes actually leads to weight gain. And the stress of yo-yo dieting can cause its own kind of harm. Again, my point is not to argue the science, but there is plenty of evidence that the way we think about, talk about, and pathologize larger bodies is not leading to better health outcomes for those bodies. And isn't that the goal? That is why movements like Healthy at Every Size emphasize just that conversations about health and conversations about size are not the same conversation. But discrimination based on size is not really about health anyway. It is about shame. There's a popular name on the internet for people who attempt to shame strangers in the guise of helping them out. They're called concern trolls. Larger people, most especially women, know this dynamic only too well. Just like some white people feel like they can comment on and even touch the bodies of people of color, some people feel justified in commenting on the bodies of others, usually disguised as an expression of concern. No one is fooled. When it comes to health concerns, there are so many things we could do in America to increase the general health of our population if that is what we cared to do. Things like giving people access to basic health care, eliminating food deserts, providing clean water and safe housing, removing toxins from the environment, especially the environments of poor black and brown communities. We could create safer workplaces, eliminate the school-to-prison pipeline, replace incarceration with addiction treatment and mental health care. We could reduce income inequality and the stress of poverty. provide better care for our elderly, provide adequate accommodations for people with disabilities. All these things would lead to healthier bodies in our communities. None of them involve offering unsolicited advice to strangers. There is just never any need to go there. And what if we all remembered anyway that bodies are miracles? Every body you see, every body you interact with is a miracle. Every body demands our utmost respect. My body, your body. There's a popular website called The Body Is Not an Apology, dedicated to addressing the many ways in which our bodies are stigmatized and controlled. American culture is intensely moralistic about the body. But our bodies are not the measures of our virtue or our vice. I'll say that again. Our bodies are not the measures of our virtue or our vice. They do not establish our ranking of value. They do not signify our worth. We do not need to justify the space we inhabit, and nobody should be made to feel less than because of their body. Our Universalist theology says all people are worthy of love, which means all bodies are worthy of love because people are bodies, at least until the singularity comes and we're all digitized and uploaded to the great mainframe in the sky. But until that happens, to be human is to be embodied. We don't have bodies, we are bodies, and those bodies are beautiful. Yes, all of our bodies are different, but difference is beautiful. Yes, all of our bodies are vulnerable in different ways, but vulnerability is also beautiful, and scary and sometimes thrilling, and the birthplace of compassion and kindness. Yes, our bodies change over time. The body you have at 60 is not the body you had at 20. The body you have after childbirth is not the body before. But bodies are not meant to be static. They are temples of life. Our bodies hurt and they heal. They love. They give life and they depart from life. Life happens in them and through them and leaves its imprint in our flesh, and this is to be celebrated. Our bodies are the miracle playground of whatever spark of unrepeatable divine joy dances into being within us, dances for a time, departs into mystery. What do we owe our bodies but reverence, tenderness, sympathy, gratitude? All bodies are beautiful. All bodies are beautiful. All bodies are beautiful. Blessed be, and Amen.